This is Ben Slinger from Podchaser and the BitStorm Podcast, and you're listening to Legends of Tabletop.
Good evening, everybody. I've got Ben with me tonight, and we've got episode 113. I can't believe it's been so many, but here we are. How's it going, Ben?
That's yeah, going pretty good, pretty good. How are you tonight?
Not too bad, not too bad. I want a complete non sequitur before we start.
Sure.
I'm sitting on the couch. I'm doing research for tonight. I'm going through all the stuff, and I look up, and there's a commercial for Shark Week. All right, whatever. It's Michael Phelps versus a great white, and I'm just like, what the hell is happening?
Man, he's sold out.
Yeah, I assume he's not in the water with a shark, and maybe it's like speed things and whatever. But I was like, man, they must really be stretching at this point for Shark Week.
Little known fact, but Michael Phelps actually has 3 rows of teeth in there, so it might be an even match.
It could be. I was a little flummoxed. I was like, all right, I'm just going to turn this off and go back to it.
Certainly not something you see every day.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right, so you're a lead developer over here on this this monstrosity, this huge thing we've got going on for Podchaser. You guys have been active for, I guess, just about a month now.
Yep.
The IMDb of podcasts. That's a pretty big aspiration.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it was pitched originally. So, funnily enough, yesterday we realized the 1-year anniversary since my co-founder Bradley posted in Reddit to say, hey, like, does anyone know of something that's basically the IMDb of podcasts? That's what I'm looking for. And hey, if not, do you want to help me make it? And, there's sort of a flurry of people who responded, myself being one of them. And we just happened to, our visions kind of aligned on it as we spoke. And we brought another few people on board and started building it. And yeah, we've got to this point where we released this beta, and, we've had a great response so far. It's been really cool to see that there are a lot of other people out there who obviously also share our vision. They've been looking for something like this. We've had multiple people say that they get together and have speculated in the past that they should build something pretty much exactly like what we're doing. So yeah, it's been really good, and we're hoping that it can continue to grow and we can get people on board. And a lot of it is about the community, because there is such, podcasts are one of those things that really have a community who are just really into it, right? They love podcasts. I'd be really interested to see what the sort of the average number of podcasts people have in their queue, because I feel like it'd be relatively high. And I think there are many people out there who listen to one podcast. And so, yeah, we're really hoping that Podchaser can be a resource for them and sort of a gathering place. We are down the line hoping to looking into putting some more discussion sorts of things in place. And yeah, just a way to discover new podcasts, share podcasts more easily. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like most people that listen to podcasts are into, like, averaging, 5 or 6, 10 podcasts that they're probably listening to at any one time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think they start to collect them as well. I think people find more and more podcasts they want to listen to until they're at the point where they can't keep up. They're listening to podcasts at 2 times speed in their favorite podcast player every second of the day to get through everything they want to listen to.
Yeah, I think,
but that's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, way back when, I think I was listening to probably about 20 podcasts at one time. But, I listened all day at work. It was great. And then, as my life situation changed, I've parsed way down, and it's really hard to pick up a new show now, because I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to listen to this now.
No, I sometimes wish I had a job where I could listen to podcasts all day. Because you'd learn a lot, you'd laugh a lot. Like, there's, podcasts offer a whole lot. And at the moment, I kind of just stick to, mostly comedy podcasts that I keep up with, and then occasionally go back to listen to some of the others, or maybe binge on one for a while.
Right. Well, if you like comedy and improv, I'll throw out the Two Black Eyes podcast. That's one of the network's own, run by GM Neil, who's also running 2 of our actual play campaigns. So I'll throw it out there.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll check that out. I'm always looking for good new comedy podcasts, and particularly improv. I'm just a fan of improv, and obviously, so I have a. I'm sure we'll discuss this, but I have a podcast, BitStorm, which is a game design improvised game design podcast as well. So
two podcasts
right up my alley. It's true, yeah. Well, one of them is defunct now, as most podcasts tend to become, unfortunately. I haven't run the stats on Podchaser on how many podcasts in our database sort of haven't released an episode in the last 3 years, but it's probably a large number. No, that's right. I started podcasting with my friend Trevor just over a year ago with Two Sweary Dads, which was a podcast about parenting. We both have young kids. And we were doing that we did 32 episodes, but by the end, we were realizing that we're actually having more fun on this monthly segment we did, which we called Click Pitch, which is where we'd use a random word generator and pitch game ideas at each other. So we broke that off into its own podcast, which is now called BitStorm. And then I think after a couple of months realized again, well, we're actually having more fun every second week when we do that podcast. So let's shut down the other one and do BitStorm full time. So and now we've been doing that for a while. We get sort of industry guests on from the local games industry in Australia and other gaming podcasts. And yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Cool. Very cool. So getting back to Podchaser, what makes Podchaser different than other podcast aggregators, like, with Stitcher or Podbay or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things currently that sets us apart is we really focus on the individual episodes of a podcast. And so, right now, if you go to Podchaser, if you've got a beta key, you can log in. If you don't, you can use the Legends of Tabletop key, or you can use the BitStorm key if you like. But you see that you get trending episodes right off the bat, and that's what we want to see. We're sort of sick of going to other aggregators and seeing that list of podcasts on the front page, and it almost never changed. It ended up being very static. Serial was near the top. Joe Rogan was up there. It wasn't some place. It wasn't a place that you'd come back to every day to see what was new, and that's really what we're hoping to do with Podchaser. And it's a challenge. And if you go to Top Rated right now, you see there's a lot of Joe Rogan in there because we had a lot of Joe Rogan fans join us this week, which is fantastic. Right. We're hoping as we get more and more people in, that will sort of even out a little bit. But the idea is that you come back to Podchaser hopefully every time a new episode of your favorite podcast comes out, because you want to read reviews of it, what other people thought. Eventually down the line, you want to discuss it with people, or you just want to have your say. You want to say, oh, that was one of their best episodes yet. I'm going to rate that 5 stars. I'm going to leave them a review and let other people know, and hopefully, soon let the podcasters themselves know. One of the features that we're going to be rolling out in the near future is letting podcasters and podcast creators claim their feed on Podchaser, which will give them some element of control on how that's displayed. Most of the info we're still going to rely on the RSS feed, because we feel like that should be sort of the single source of truth for the majority of things, like your episode titles, your URLs, your descriptions, your images.
Right.
But we want to let podcasters supplement that data with additional links to their social media, links to their Patreon, possibly additional images. We may even let them, add things to their show notes and supplement that in some way. We're taking feature requests. Obviously, we'll be adding to that as time goes by. But that's the idea: is to really just data and have it be a destination for people to come back.
Okay, cool. How did you guys build your podcast database?
Most of it's from iTunes.
Okay.
They're obviously the big fish, and they're probably the biggest database of podcasts out there because everyone submits their podcast to iTunes. It's not super easy to get that data out of iTunes. They don't just offer it up. They do have an API, which we've made use of. They have listings of podcasts in various places that we've made use of. We were hoping that they have this affiliate program where you can get access to all of their App Store data. Unfortunately, we discovered it does not contain podcasts, so that was useless to us. But so we're continuing on how we are. And of course, we're just taking requests from people to have their podcast added, and we'll very soon be allowing them to do that directly on the site, to add your RSS feed directly into Podchaser. And probably we'll just parse it on the fly and it'll be there within a few minutes. So.
Oh, cool. Quick turnaround. So if somebody has a podcast right now and they notice that they're not in there, they can just send you guys an email and say, hey, we want to get in on Podchaser?
Absolutely. Yep. Just send us an email. We have a invitation link in our footer if you're signed into Podchaser to our community Slack channel. Getting some discussion happening, and that's one way you can contact us as well. And yeah, we have a bug report tool on the site that's mainly for bug reports, but we do get people using that to feature requests, and we're trying to make that more obvious exactly where they should go for that. But there are multiple ways you can get in contact with us for sure.
Okay, cool. And the front page features, like you said, episodes instead of podcasts. And that's cool because, you might find something there that you wouldn't necessarily be looking for. You'd be like, oh, there's this cool show on, I don't know, Roman history or, Joe Rogan or whatever.
Absolutely. No, there's so much stuff out there. It's kind of nuts. We're going to be improving our tagging and category systems soon as well. So that's something that a lot of people have asked for, just particularly people in the like tabletop gaming and actual play podcast sort of space, because as I'm sure you're aware, there's not really a great iTunes category that it fits into. You have to go into games and hobbies or whatever. So that's one of the things that we're going to be putting in place really soon, is just more granular categories. We're basically going to let people put an unlimited number of categories on their podcast as long as they're relevant. Sure. And probably some, we'll have it ordered in some way. We may even let users rate how relevant a category or a tag is on a particular podcast or episode, so we can get a bit of feedback there. But yeah, that's one of the big things is the categories and tagging system, which I think will also set us apart to some degree. Most other aggregators out there just use the standard iTunes categories because that's what's generally available in people's feeds.
Right.
But this is one of the areas where we do really want to supplement what's in the feed with something richer, which is a broader range of categories, and the tags will come into it in a variety of ways. I imagine people will probably be using tags more on specific episodes, and our goal for that is, for one, help people search for things. The way our index works, obviously the only information we have initially for an episode, for example, is the title and the description.
Sure.
So what tags will be able to do is supplement that and let people basically let it become a keyword for searching. So if someone puts in a tag of such and such, then searching for that tag will mean that episode will at least have the option of coming up in the list. Again, we'll have a relevancy rating on that will let people vote on and that sort of thing. But we want to be the best search out there for podcasts on the internet. That's the goal.
Right. Oh, you guys are off to a hell of a start. So
thank you. I hope so. We're pretty proud of the results we're getting right now. The speed, I know, isn't the greatest. We're working on that, but
you've got a lot of people coming in. So I mean, that's
a lot of people coming in, and there's over 18 million episodes in our database now. So there's a lot of stuff to search.
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there.
And right now, the tagging feature is fan generated, or as a podcaster myself, I could go in also and tag stuff, but it's essentially user generated at this point.
Yeah, it's user generated. Again, once podcasters can claim their pages, at the very least for categories for their overall podcast, they'll definitely have final say, if not the entire say. We'll be asking for feedback from podcasters themselves as we roll it out, but it may just be that if you've claimed your feed, you just what you want your categories to be, and that's it. Tags will continue to be user generated, and again, I imagine they'll mostly be on episodes. We let people tag podcasts as well, but we've found that people tend to tag episodes more often. But again, we may give podcasters the ability to, veto certain tags, delete certain tags if they've been added by users. Again, we're hoping that that the community will help us, just because it's necessary. With the database the size of ours, it's impossible for us as a company, even if we hire 100 interns, to be moderating all the tags that come in and making sure that there's no abuse happening and that they are relevant to what's being tagged. So we'll be providing probably basic up and down votes on tags to say, yes, this is relevant. No, this isn't relevant. And there'll be a threshold there. So we're kind of hoping that if the vast majority of people do the right thing, then those few people who are inevitably going to come in and put stupid tags on things will just get downvoted. And Reddit is a big inspiration for us, which is a funny thing to say considering some of the people who live on Reddit. But
sure.
I mean, just point of view and the way. Really, they're quite good at making relevant things sort of float to the top, and so we're hoping we can emulate at least some of that functionality.
Okay. Now, is there any sort of notification of someone to come in and tag BitStorm with, game design or something like that? Is there any sort of notification that you would get to say, hey, episode blah 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 got tagged?
Yep. There probably will be down the line.
Okay.
That's a good idea. We've talked about some notifications. There'd definitely be notifications if you've claimed your page for any new reviews and probably ratings that you get, an aggregate of them, an email a digest sort of thing every day or something. We'll probably give options on how you set that up. We'll probably give notifications of, again, maybe a digest of here are the tags that were added today, and that would let you go through yourself as a podcaster and say, oh, this person's obviously, being an asshole, and we'll just remove those or at least report them. Again, we don't know, because the thing is, we could have podcasters gaming the system too, right? We don't necessarily want them to be able to remove tags that are relevant, but might be slightly negative, which hopefully wouldn't be many, but it's just something we're going to have to be aware of. So it's still all up in the air, but that's the general idea. Yeah.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's still like a living document, as it were. I mean, things are still coming and going, so it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would like to think that the podcasting community as a whole would not do that sort of stuff. At least everybody that we, associate with, I can't see that would be an issue, but I'm sure there's probably people out there that still would be like, well, it's not hurting anybody.
It's true. I've been pleasantly surprised so far. We've had a few thousand users come through the site, and we haven't really had anybody who's just trying to be terrible. They're all pretty much using the site as intended. There are a few reviews that have come through with some questionable content, notably on the day that we did post in the Joe Rogan subreddit and get a lot of Joe Rogan fans in. I haven't even listened to his podcast. I don't know, but there's a reputation there. A couple people lived up to it. But no, in general, it's been really good. And yeah, we will definitely, we're certainly aware of how easily, basically anywhere you can type into the internet, type into a text field on the internet that other people are going to be able to see, some people are going to be terrible and abusive and hateful. And yeah, we've thought about the fact that we're going to have to deal with that and have some strategies that we'll roll out. So,
sure.
Yeah.
It is the internet.
Exactly.
I'm jumping back and forth in between the chat, and right now Trev and Bradley are both vying for you for either prime minister or president. So you've got a lot of options if for some reason this doesn't work out.
Screw you guys. As you probably guessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. One of the other cool things is you can see reviews at the list level. So when you go to the front page, that stuff is a bit, so you don't have to go searching around for it. If a podcast you haven't seen before comes up, there's reviews there that you can check out and be like, oh, this is getting really good reviews. Might be something I'd be interested in. You click the download button and you're in.
Yeah. Well, literally just today we rolled out the fact that you can now get a count at least of the ratings and reviews for each episode from that front page, from any list that they're showed in, and you can click right through to see the reviews, and it loads in pretty quickly to get an idea of what people are saying about it. So that's exactly it. We just a big part of our main goal when we started this was the UI. One of the things we found was lacking with a lot of others, particularly iTunes, is it's just not very usable. We want to make it really easy. We want basically the lowest barrier of entry for people to come in and start rating things, start reviewing things. And I mean, definitely, at the moment we're in closed beta, so you have to sign up before you can see anything. But once we're out of the closed beta, you won't have to sign in, obviously, to see those lists, to see those reviews. It'll only be any sort of interaction once you actually want to rate or review something that will require an account. So yeah, it will be really, we plan to make it really easy to just come in and see what's trending, what's happening, what's new. Again, another feature that we're hoping to put out is an actual, like a trending topic or a trending search term, which will pull both from what people are searching for, and also one of the things that our indexing will allow us to do is look at recent episodes and pull out terms that are coming up more prominently over the past week than the rest of our database, sort of thing. So I haven't written that yet, but I imagine that you'll get things like new movies that are coming out that are popular. So I saw someone the other day on Facebook ask whether any people in this particular podcast group were talking about Edgar Wright's new movie Baby Driver. That's one of the things that would likely come up from a trending sort of topic like that. And I typed that into Podchaser, and there were literally 25 podcasts where people were already talking about it. It's 25 episodes, right? So I think that's the sort of thing that's really going to make people, hopefully come back and they want to. People want to listen to podcasts, and if they want to hear it, the ones they're already subscribed to might not be talking about the stuff they want to hear. So
sure. All right. Since you touched that, we've talked about iTunes, a little bit tangentially here. In the past, it's been like the go-to for podcasts. Like, are you on iTunes? Did you submit your feed? But like you said, they're not really user-friendly. Like, you've got to give a credit card to even like log in to do stuff, and the rating system's not fantastic because you get something that begins to get upvoted and then it's just there. So guys who have a little show, you're never going to see that recommended anywhere. No.
Yeah, to be honest, I've got a lot to say about iTunes. I probably shouldn't say a lot of it. They've been the standard for the past 10 years, and they brought podcasting into the mainstream. If you can, it's in the mainstream now. It's sort of I feel like every year people say podcasts are really blowing up, like they're becoming the mainstream. But they've been saying that for the last 10 years. But everyone still has to listen on iTunes, which is a horrible piece of software. And yeah, for one, to rate, you need to have iTunes or can you? I don't know. Can you do? Well, it's Apple Podcast now, right? But the app, at least. I don't even know if you can rate within that, but I know that on iTunes, you have to sign in. I've definitely had a lot of people tell me that no matter what username there's some bug that's been around for years in iTunes. No matter what username you try to sign up with, it'll say it's already taken. I started my podcast. I tried to get my dad to rate it, as you do when you start a podcast, and he literally couldn't do it. And he's the one that taught me how to program. Like he's savvy.
Right.
And then, and of course, their recommendations and things. Everyone wants to get into new and noteworthy, but nobody knows how to do that. Mm-hmm. Nobody even really knows if it's an algorithm or if there are people behind the scenes who are choosing that stuff.
Right.
And so, again, that was another one of our goals, is we wanted to make it clear that exactly why, if you look at our front page, why those things are on the front page. We want to be relatively transparent about our algorithms, and we do show the exact number of ratings right there on the front page. You can see that it's, if you go to our trending page right now, sure, there'll be a bunch of stuff that's being rated 5 stars, but you can see that it's a single rating that's doing that. So that's probably got a bit less weight than the ones that are, maybe rated 4.7 but have 50, 60 ratings.
Sure.
Again, iTunes just doesn't really make that clear. They've got their weird popularity rating that, again, nobody seems to quite know where that comes from.
Yeah.
And so they've, they've made some steps at this recent, whatever it was, conference thing that they do. I can't remember what it's called, where they talked about podcasts. They've rebranded it. They're bringing out some extra stuff. They've done one thing that as probably the only company who can right now, they've made extensions to the RSS spec to allow for some more functionality in there, which is great for us, actually, because obviously it's all public, it's all out there. We can use that too. So the more people that make use of those extra elements around seasons and different things, we'll be able to make use of that too. So that's fantastic.
Sure.
And their analytics as well. To be honest, that's going to compete with us, where that's one of our monetization strategies down the line, is to have premium accounts to provide podcasters like yourself with analytics on listening stats and different things. They're the big dog in the room, and we're coming from a different direction, I guess. We are trying to give it a bit more of a grassroots sort of thing. We're a relatively small team. We're still doing this in our off hours. We all have full-time jobs, and we're really just trying to build this thing to be something great for the community.
Right. Well, it's a good thing, because they've been terrible thus far. Their analytics are non-existent. Trev posted in the chat that the ratings are by region. So if I'm trying to find say Dice Heroes and look for ratings, I'm in the U.S., they're in Australia. It hasn't been. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and you can see where that's come from, because they have these different storefronts within iTunes, and they needed that for their music and for their apps, where there's different prices and there's different things available in different regions. But for podcasts, it's just kind of hobbled that whole system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We'll jump back up. So we're kind of talking about listenership and ratings and getting people visibility and things like that. So even with the system that you guys have in place, it still seems like maybe for the most part, podcasts with a smaller listenership still may sort of suffer from that relegated to the sidelines kind of thing. If they don't have fans that come in and then review, still kind of bumps them out a little bit. Is that a problem that can be fixed?
It's a good question. It's definitely a difficult problem.
Should it be fixed?
Because depends on how good those small podcasts actually are.
There you go.
No, I mean there are probably only 2 types of podcasts that have low listenership. There are those that just haven't reached their audience who would appreciate them, and there are those who don't actually have an audience out there because they're either actually not that good, or there are things holding them back.
Sure.
We definitely want to put tools in place to let that first group find their audience and promote them a bit better. We're hoping that the trending stuff will help with that. At the moment, it is to a degree, but that's mainly because we do have, we're still starting off. We have a relatively low set of users who are going in and rating things. So at the moment, basically, anything that someone rates will probably show up on the front page for at least a short while, which is great, actually, because it means someone liked it. Hopefully someone else will. Hopefully they'll see it. That will continue to help. The trending page is not about the rating number itself. It's about people looking at that episode or podcast. Again, though, like you say, as we get bigger, the ones with huge fan bases are going to sort of still float to the top of that, which is an issue. Some of the things we've talked about doing, we're going to have featured spots. We're going to have paid featured spots, which is one thing, but we're also going to have sort of some curated spots. And we may even have some sort of algorithmically generated spots. They'll probably still be moderated in some way, but with the very idea being pull out a podcast that matches certain criteria. And that might be, that they've been going for a certain amount of time, but that they're, at least from our perspective, their listenership is relatively low. But maybe that they've got a few 5-star ratings in, a few high ratings in there. So we know that some people think they're good. There are a lot of different ways we can sort of pull from that long tail of smaller but quality podcasts that just don't have that, they don't have the celebrity stars, or they don't have NPR backing them, or they're not in a major podcast network,
Mm-hmm. Like you were talking about, Joe Rogan, and we were talking, off air about, like say Brian Posehn or Matthew Mercer, their fans are rabid, and, they already have that name draws, as a celebrity. So it's kind of hard for, Joe Blow in his basement to kind of break into those ranks then, even if they're doing something, pretty cool. I mean, you hope that people find it eventually, it's a slow road to get there, but it can be tough.
Yeah. It can be, for sure. I mean, one of the other things I'm hoping will help is just that we're generally hoping to make podcasts more discoverable based on what a particular person is looking for. So, all of our lists are filterable on a variety of different things. And we're going to be adding more filters as we sort of figure out what the useful statistics are to be able to filter on there. And, a lot of those are just statistical. It's, find me episodes that are more than 60 minutes long and, this and that, but that were released in the past week or whatever. But down the line, we're going to add things like we've talked about having location-based tags. So you could literally say, find me podcasts that are recorded within this, this point on a map, or of me, or whatever. So you can find more local stuff. And obviously just the tagging in the category system will also help you narrow that down in different ways. Okay. And because we will allow more categories, more tags, we're hoping that does make things more discoverable. So if you're trying to find specifically tabletop podcasts, then you can get a list of them. You can filter that down. And you'll have your different, the different games that you play, for example, can be tags themselves. So you could get down to quite a granular level, and maybe I don't know how many people are out there who are looking specifically for these sorts of things, but we're hoping that we can provide them with the tools to find them.
Okay. And Bradley mirrored what you said just as you started. Granular filters will help with the smaller podcasts to be found too. Keyword filters, location filters, all the stuff you just talked about.
There you go. I told you, our vision's aligned.
Great minds and all that, right?
That's it.
Let's see. So you can rate and review individual episodes as well as the podcasts overall themselves, which is pretty standard for that. And you had mentioned talking about premium service. So will you guys be moving to a subscription service or ad revenue base? How do you guys see yourselves moving forward?
Probably a bit of both. There are a lot of as anyone who's listened to podcasts know, there's a lot of sponsorship going on. We may try to get involved with some of those sort of big names who are already sponsoring podcasts, who might be able to help us out as well. Have some campaigns there, or perhaps just more traditional ads. Premium services definitely now. Nothing that's on the site now will ever be put behind a paywall. Of course, we want to make the discovery, the rating, the reviews. That's just always going to be open to everyone. But we'll be offering premium services to podcasters themselves, with analytics being one of the big draws there. But we're hoping that we can. We're behind the scenes discussing other things that will be able to be offered there. And we've even this is completely not necessarily going to happen. We've only talked about it, but potentially premium services for listeners if they want that. For one, if we did have ad revenue, then it would hide any ads if that was something they wanted. And analytics for them as well. Probably some sort of little flair when they write reviews or something to show that they're a supporter. It'd almost be a sort of Patreon style model for people who want to support Podchaser and get a little bit extra out of that as well while they're using the site. So, we're hoping that we can make using the site fun and attractive enough that people would want to do that and would want to show their support in that way, and give them a little bit extra at the same time.
Okay, cool. And will podcasters themselves be able to advertise on the site? And how is that handled, vis-a-vis well, they paid money. Of course they're, on the rated to, whatever.
We've said from the very beginning that we're definitely not going to let podcasters just buy their way to the top of a rated list or anything like that. That's sort of definitely another one of our revenue streams that we've talked about is podcasters themselves being able to buy featured spots, ad spots, but they'll be clearly marked. And again, it may even be, we'll probably have different levels of that. So, hopefully we'll get the traffic that the front page will be definitely a premium spot, but, it might be more affordable for smaller podcasts to be able to buy a spot, for example, on the tabletop gaming category page, and they're the ad for a week or whatever it is on that specific category. There are a lot of options there as well for giving visibility, whether it's paid or again through sort of the algorithmic stuff that I talked about earlier, to smaller podcasts.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I would be interested in something like that. I mean, every little bit helps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, we're hoping that ads on Podchaser, you're advertising directly to people who already listen to podcasts. So we'd hopefully get a bit more kind of return on investment than just broadly Google or Facebook ads or that sort of thing. So.
And would Podchaser as an entity then also be interested in sponsoring podcasts themselves?
That's a good question. Yeah, potentially, absolutely. That could be something we'd look at down the line. We haven't talked about it yet, so I can't say one way or the other, but yeah, for sure.
Okay. Are you guys working on any sort of mobile situation right now for Podchaser?
Yes. So actually, our mobile-ready website should be out in the next week or so. We've had a lot of people mention that, and we're very much aware that that's a priority for people. That's really just been a time issue. As I said, we're all still working on it in our spare time. So it was get as much done as we could by that beta date that we'd promised. Mobile didn't quite make the cut. But no, Ryan, our designer, has been slaving away for the last couple of weeks, getting that looking nice and much more usable. So that will be coming soon. And then we've talked about an app down the line. That won't be real soon, again, just because of our development resources. But we're talking to investors at the moment. We're hoping that sometime this year we'll get an influx of money that could, for one, help us work on it more often, and also hire more developers, including likely a relative priority would be putting out an app for mobile devices.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, how much we use our phones. Like, I just got a smartphone when we started the podcast because I dumped my little Go phone in the toilet. And I was like, well, I guess we're done with that.
Yep.
And my brother was like, here, I've got an old Samsung. I'll give it to you. I was like, all right, cool. And, now, especially with the podcast, I mean, if it wasn't for that, I don't know so much, but it's always checking messages and emails and Twitter and, there's Instagram and like all these different things. So, and everything's double, right? Like I have all my personal stuff and then all the podcast stuff. It's crazy.
No, it very quickly becomes a fixture of your life. Absolutely. So yeah, mobile is definitely very important to us. One thing I should say is we're not, at least initially, we're not trying to compete with the other player apps that are out there. Like there are already, unlike in the sort of directory aggregation rating style stuff where we really didn't think there were any. Sorry, that's my son. If you can hear that, we really didn't think there were any sort of real quality competitors out there. The podcast apps themselves, there are a ton of great ones. I use Pocket Cast myself. I know Overcast is really good. Podcast Addict, I think it is on Android, is really good. We're certainly not trying to eat their lunch. And we're going to start reaching out to them soon, actually, because ideally we'd be integrating with them. That you go to Podchaser and you find a new podcast and you say, all right, add that to my Pocket Cast or to my Overcast or whatever. So even when we do come out with an app, I think the focus will be, we'll always let you play episodes from within our app, of course, because that just makes sense. Sure. But I think the focus would really be on, being a really good companion to your actual listening app. And, the listening app is where you can set up the playlists and things that you actually want to listen to. You can, you've got all the features in there for taking out your silence and whatever you want to do as a hardcore podcast listener. But
sure.
But we're hoping you'll come to us to then rate the episodes you listen to and see what people think about them and find your podcast.
Right, and that makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not a business guy, but for those things to sort of work hand in hand, and it's not. More things available to the consumer in that regard to help find podcasts and rate and all those things. And like even within the podcast community, we talk about other shows all the time. It's like, yeah, they're better. Go listen to them. If you don't like this, go find something that you like more. That's fantastic. But, you can't just ignore it and be like, nobody else does what we're doing or, whatever. So to dovetail those things together would, to me, sounds like, match made in heaven.
Absolutely. I find that that's something really unique about the podcast community. And I don't know if it's just because podcasts, and, to be honest, I have Apple in some way to thank for this, in that they never tried to sort of put podcasts behind their doors. It was always RSS feeds that were open to the world, which means that you can write podcast apps that can listen to them. You can write things like Podchaser, which can now just check people's feeds to see when they have new episodes without having to go through iTunes. And so the podcasting world has always been sort of this open landscape where people can just publish their stuff. It's sort of really, it's what the World Wide Web is in general. So. Yeah, that's a real benefit, and I find that the community itself has kind of taken from that in some way, in that it is really open and people do tend to help each other out, and it's not this, it's not a direct competition necessarily. It's if someone else comes out with a podcast or on a similar topic or whatever, you tend to work together and like you said, talk about them and promo them or whatever, have them guest on your show.
Right.
So yeah, I'm hoping that the same thing will happen amongst the podcast apps. From what I know and have seen of particularly Pocket Cast and the Overcast devs, they seem like pretty good teams, pretty friendly people. And I'm hoping we can work together with them to sort of have some mutually beneficial integration there.
Cool. Yeah, I saw something online you guys posted, something like 60% of people in the U.S. are aware of what podcasting is now, and there must be hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, right? I mean, it's ubiquitous now. I mean, prior to I think 2008 was the first time I had ever even heard the term, and it was the Penny Arcade stuff that they did with the release of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, the hell is this? People recording D&D like this? All right, whatever. And from that point, like, it just took off to, like I said, I was probably listening to 20 different AP podcasts after that.
Yeah, that was probably my first introduction to any sort of role-playing podcast as well. But no, you're right. Like, it's huge. There are hundreds of thousands. We've got over 350,000 podcasts in our database. Not all, like I said before, a large chunk of them are probably not active anymore. But you know, the history of them is still relevant, and so we want them in our database, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, it is really taking off, and you know, the stats we saw from a recent survey put it on par with Twitter for the amount of people who are like listening to podcasts on a regular basis, at the very least. So yeah, that's huge. That's a huge market. That's a huge amount of people who are aware of this, you know, art form in itself. So
cool. And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for podcasters today?
For podcasters themselves, I mean, finding an audience is a huge one. Absolutely. You know, anyone can start a podcast, really. Like, the barrier to entry is really low, which is awesome. It certainly didn't take us much. You know, my friend Trevor and I, when we started our podcast, we'd been talking about it for 6 months. We literally said one day when we were talking about it, well, let's just start recording tonight. And we did. And we've recorded every week since. So, you know, like I said, the barrier to entry is really low. We didn't have any special equipment. We just, you know, we'd done a bit of reading up on what you do, and we fired up Audacity and put our crappy headsets on, and and away we went. But having said that, we still only get 50 odd, you know, downloads an episode. And it's hard to grow that. It's definitely hard to make people, to help people find their audience. And I think there is an audience out. I think there is more of a large audience out there for a lot of these smaller, more niche podcasts that just don't have the marketing or don't have the celebrity, you know, names to get it out there. So that's definitely, I think that's the biggest challenge. The other one is analytics, actually knowing how many people are listening.
Yeah.
Which is something we, you know, Podchaser is going to try to help there. But again, it's sort of a symptom of how open the format is. Podcasts are literally just audio files sitting out there on a server on the internet somewhere, and nobody can track all of those, except the server. You know, even the servers themselves can only track, hey, someone downloaded it. They can't tell you if someone listened to it. They can't, you know.
Right.
Whether yeah. Anyway, we'll provide analytics for podcasts, for episodes that are listened on the Podchaser site, because again, that's where we do have some control. We know that someone hit pause at, you know, 39 minutes and then hit play again 5 minutes later or whatever. You know, you can get that sort of detail. And I know that Apple Podcasts, that's another one of the things that they've. And again, that's where it has to happen, and it has to happen at the listener level. Or the player level, I guess.
Sure.
So that's definitely one of the real challenges, and you're never going to get all of it because, again, like we can only give you analytics on people who play through Podchaser. Apple can only give you analytics on people who play through their app, and granted, that's probably for a long time going to be a larger chunk of people.
Right.
But you're never going to get the whole pie, you know.
Right. Yeah, I've always downloaded everything manually because I'm not that smart, I guess. You know, I don't have things, you know, all up in a queue, and it's easier for me to keep track of stuff that way. So I'm not listening anywhere other than on an MP3 player. So I mean, it tracks a download.
So your stats might be accurate for people, but
yeah,
but yeah, there are definitely a lot of people who, you know, set up their podcatchers to subscribe to those 20 podcasts and then never catch up on half of them, and you know, they all count as hits for those people. Makes them feel good, I'm sure, but you're not accurate listening stats.
Sure. Yeah, I do like monthly stats for the show and everything, and it's, sometimes frustrating, sometimes exciting, but like I say, the accuracy, who knows? Like we use SoundCloud to host our RSS, and it gives fairly good analytics, but if people aren't logged in, I don't, it's just some generic other.
That's it. Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's really difficult. So yeah, I mean, Podchaser will be able to help a little bit there, hopefully, but that's just a general problem with the industry as a whole. So
sure. Where it just popped in my head. Where do you see podcasting going in the future? I mean, is this kind of like status quo? We're going to be where we're at, or is this like, it's almost like new media at this point. Like people don't read the paper, and the news. Like I don't ever watch the news anymore because it's just horrible. So
yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, because I mean the same thing happened. I mean, it's been happening for years. In other mediums, just being able to publish on the internet at all, created that same sort of thing with people blogging. And for a long while, it looked like that was, that's why newspapers were going to fail, because everybody was blogging about things, and that's where people were reading stuff. And then that kind of went away as the rise of social media came about. And now everyone turns to Facebook, but there's still a lot of traditional journalism and stuff going. I don't think that's going to go away, and I think you're always going to have your big players and your sort of your small fish. But those small fish are valuable, and just like you have people who have their niche little blogs or who get a ton of followers on Facebook or YouTube, for example. Same sort of thing with YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You just get communities gathering around them, and I mean, inevitably it's about the personalities, really. Like you said earlier off air, I think like nobody goes into podcasting to make money, and you do it for the love of it. So yeah, if you get lucky, you get lucky, and hopefully you do build a bit of a community around yourself, and you become part of that. But yeah, I don't know how much it's going to change. Inevitably it will, but I think it'd be a big shift. It'd have to be it'd be a difficult shift away from the current way that things work, I think. I mean, it probably would, as much as I hate to say it, take someone like Apple to really put their full force behind it and say, no, this is the way podcasts work now. And I mean, if they did that, everyone would just have to go with it. But it would make some waves, If they did something like, if they did something so drastic that every podcast player out there had to change the way they work, like that's no small thing. So I think we're going to stick with how we are for the time being. I think it's going to grow. I think you're going to get more people finding out about podcasts and listening to podcasts that might otherwise not have. And yeah, I mean, obviously we're hoping Podchaser will be somewhere near the middle of that, and helping people find them and helping people listen, and and helping people communicate about them, build those communities.
Yep, absolutely. What do you listen to? You said you got in at the Penny Arcade spot, which I guess maybe like in history will be like the birth of podcasts for so many people. What's on your normal playlist?
So I think what actually got me started with podcasts was Kevin Smith with Smodcast way back in the day. I think he started in 2005 or something crazy. He's been going a long time. I'm pretty sure I went to his website every week to find the MP3 down. Like, I don't think of even loading it into any sort of app. So for a long time it was Kevin Smith, and he obviously grew his sort of podcasting empire and everything that's come out of that. But lately it's the McElroys, my brother and me, and I'm sure you're aware of the Adventure Zone, which is obviously another big actual play podcast. And they're sort of all their connecting stuff. Those are sort of the big ones on my playlist that I keep up with now. I don't listen to a lot of other role-playing ones. I haven't kept up on. I know Penny Arcade has their C Team going now, which is their live streamed one, but I haven't really been keeping up with that. And then, a lot of the gaming podcasts from Australia in the Australasian Gaming Podcast Network that BitStorm is part of. So I keep up with Reset Gaming there and the Inconsolables and a few others. So, to be honest, I don't, as ironic as this is, considering I am a podcaster and developing Podchaser, I don't get a lot of time to listen to podcasts these days. My go-to time for podcasts is when I'm doing the dishes, and I've been so busy with Podchaser that the dishes have been
piling up. That's fair. I have a follow-up to that, but I forgot to get my cord. Sure. I am so completely unprepared. Give me like 1 second to go grab my my cord. I can't believe I did that. I'm sitting here looking like, why is my computer going? Oh, geez, I didn't grab the cord.
Die halfway through.
Yeah. So, you listen to at least the, one actual play podcast. Do you get a chance to play yourself at all or no? Role-playing games, that is.
Not for a while. And to be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of role-playing games as much as I would really like to. I have kind of a funny story about that because my dad used to play D&D, and he had D&D handbooks.
Okay.
And I think they were first or second edition. I'm not sure. There was something way back. And I used to sit there and I used to love looking through, particularly the Monster Manual, and just checking out all these. At the time, they were just these little black and white drawings in the Monster Manual of all the different things. And for some reason, all the way through school and high school, it never clicked that this was a game I could play if I got some friends together and figured out how it worked, that I could sit there and play it. And I'm sure I knew people in high school who played, and it never kind of clicked. And it wasn't until literally in my late 20s that I found a bit. And well, it was when I started going to PAX and stuff, actually, because I moved to Canada and lived there for 6 years, and I was going to down to PAX in Seattle and across to PAX East once. I think the same year you must have gone, because I think that T-shirt is from when I was there. I think I have the same one.
Yeah, it's from 2012.
I think it was 2011 that I was there. Anyway, in Boston. But I went to all the Seattle ones. But no, it wasn't until then that I really started playing, and I bought the handbooks, and I, to be honest, I DM'd before I even played. I just kind of picked it up, and I DM'd a few games for my friends, and then had a few here and there that other people DM'd as well, and the occasional kind of pick up game with a local role playing group or with other groups of friends. So I've definitely played here or there. It's one of these things that's always appealed to me, and I love the idea of it. And for whatever reason, I've just never been able to find a really good group to get together with regularly. But no, I love it. I've got a ton of the books. And I never get to actually run a game, but
yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to find a group, and it's hard to, schedule. Everybody's got different things, and we're friends with so many other podcasters, and try to get people everything that I play now is everything online. We're running 5 campaigns on the podcast now. Yeah, everything's through Google Hangout.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to do it. I mean, it's another thing. I don't know if you've used Roll20 or anything like that.
I haven't, but I know of it. Yeah.
Yeah. A few years ago, before Roll20 came out, I started writing basically something similar to Roll20, and I only spent a week on it. I should have kept going. I only spent a week. I didn't follow through on that one. But that's something that's great for gaming groups, because you can play remotely, and it's just perfect for it. But yeah, that's the thing, that it's very time consuming, particularly as a DM, which I inevitably was, just because I was sort of the one who was most organized at the time. And it's hours of prep. Usually, to be a good DM, I think you need hours of prep.
Yeah.
No, I'd love for one of my friends to start DMing a game that I could just show up to once every few weeks, so I didn't actually have to do too much in between. Trevor.
Yeah. See, I'm lucky.
Maybe if we start a third podcast, then I'll get him to DM something and we'll actually make something happen. It has to be in podcast form, just like you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I'm lucky. I get to play everything. I'm not GMing anything. I had a 4th edition game going before the podcast, kind of started to take off, and I'm like, I can't do, a couple hours on the, trying to get stuff together for a game, and then, 4 or 5 hours to play, and it's like I'm out. So the game wound up dwindling away. But my daughter and her boyfriend decided they want to start playing D&D. I'm super excited. I started making all kinds of terrain. I went out and bought Horde of the Dragon Queen.
Yes, that's what I'm waiting for. My oldest is only 3, so I've got a little while to wait.
Mine will be 17 in October. So
okay, yeah. Well, I have a 3-year-old son and twin 1-year-old girls, so at least I'll have a whole party there ready for me once they're old enough. So.
Yep. Oh, Trevor says AGPN Actual Play Podcast sounds good. So you're good.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, I'm sure we could find a few guys or girls on there for as long again, like I said, as long as someone else DMs it.
Now, does listening to an Actual Play podcast sort of scratch that itch for you a little bit? So because you don't get a chance to play, does it substitute at all for you?
A little bit, but unfortunately what it does more is give me ideas on how I could run a game.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So it's just like, no, I don't have time to do that. I need to get more people listening to it so they can get the ideas to run the game I can play. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I will forever steal ideas, write stuff down if I ever, now that I'm going to be running again, at least a little bit.
Absolutely.
To try to supplement the available information with some other things. I've got half of a notebook of stuff that I've picked up from other Actual Play podcasts, and like that'd be really cool in this encounter, and I'm just jot down that idea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about role playing in small groups like that. Chances are the people who you're playing with haven't, well, maybe in your case they have because you're all podcasters, but chances are they weren't watching the same episode, so it's all new to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it was Scott Kurtz from PvP actually once who said he just started running games that were basically just the plots of movies, but translated into whatever setting they're in. It's great. Mm-hmm. They've already got a great 3-act structure, some drama. Most people don't notice.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. Movies, books, like I said, other podcasts. Yeah, absolutely. Beg, borrow, and steal.
Yeah.
Those are the key M's tricks. Everybody thinks it's, long hours and everything else. It's like, no, I watched this movie and I took a handful of notes and we're ready to play.
Just came up with some character names and,
Absolutely. All right. So what's next on the list for Podchaser? What are you guys planning for? What's coming up in the future?
So what I was working on today was the ability to change your username. So that's really exciting. There's a bunch of that just sort of standard application stuff that's really tedious and boring to write, but we need to have it in there. But no, some of the more exciting stuff, like I talked about, podcasters being able to claim their pages, that's going to be a big one. We're going to be bringing in custom lists. So at the moment you can save your podcast to a list or particular episodes to a list, but it's all in one place. But the idea has always been that you'll be able to save it into, give your list a name, have it as many lists as you want. Write notes against each item in the list if you want to remember why it's in a particular list. And then once we're public, make them particularly shareable. So the next time you're on Reddit or on Facebook and someone says, hey, I'm looking for new comedy podcasts, you can just put a link directly to your top 10 comedy podcasts or whatever, in Podchaser, and you've already got it there and you've got reasons why they're good and whatever, that sort of thing.
Cool.
So that's coming up. And then obviously we haven't talked about this much, despite the fact that we are supposed to be the IMDb of podcasts, is the functionality around people. So again, this is from the very beginning. And in fact, if you go back to that Reddit thread from a year ago, we were talking about it in there, was the ability to have a page on Podchaser for, I mean, ideally, hopefully down the line, everybody who's involved in a podcast. Obviously, the hosts and guests are going to be a big part of that, but even the crew and the producers and different people, there are different types of podcasts out there, and that, they don't just follow the host guest sort of structure. Sure. But yeah, we want you to be able to go to the page of a particular person, see the podcast that they host, see episodes of other podcasts that they were guests on, obviously have a bit of a bio there, their Twitter handle, their social media stuff. We'll be letting people claim those pages themselves so that the podcasters themselves can manage those pages to a certain degree. And then that will be visible, obviously on the, you'll go to an episode page and you'll see these are the people who hosted it. These are the people who are guests on it. User contributions to one, add those where they're missing, and two, vote up and down whether they're correct or not. We will be doing some automation where we pull names out of the episode descriptions and such, which will give us sort of just a baseline for who might have been in those episodes. But obviously, a lot of times people mention the names of people who weren't actually in an episode, so we'll let our users specify that, and we might keep it in there. We might say this person was mentioned in this episode, right? But sure. If they actually were a guest on that episode, then they'll get that designation, and we'll let people say how relevant those things are. So that's going to be, that's obviously a big one, and that's one of the things that's really going to set us apart as well. If we can really get that working and get that critical mass of people needed to flesh out that data.
Well, that sounds awesome. I'm excited to be a part of the beta.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your support on that. Absolutely. It's been great. We've been sort of overwhelmed by the feedback, and it's been almost completely positive. So
cool. And how long do you expect to stay in beta before you start to make other subtle changes?
Well, we'll be making a lot of changes all the way through beta. Obviously, we'll probably, and in fact, I only just thought of this today. It's not necessarily the fact, but we'll probably move to an open beta at some point. So it'll still be somewhat. It won't be necessarily a final thing. I mean, to be honest, what website is ever actually final? We'll be adding things constantly, but sure. I'd say 3 to 6 months will be. Well, I'm hoping closer to 3 months. We'll be in closed beta. We want to open it up as soon as we can, because that's the point where people can start sharing things, and that's sort of one of our big pillars of our functionality. Is we want this stuff to be nicely shareable. One of the features we hadn't talked about down the line actually is and there are other people doing some of this sort of thing, but we want people to be able to share specific segments of a podcast as well. Whether we go the route that other people have been doing of actually encoding that into a video that people can post on social media, or just a link that takes you to the episode page and plays a segment of it particularly, and maybe has a little note that person has left on why they shared this particular segment. But yeah, the shareability is obviously a big deal. It's hard to share audio right now, and we're not going to solve all the problems with that, but we hope that we can solve some of the podcast specific ones.
Okay, cool. We should probably start into like end show stuff here, but so I have a thing called the final 5 that I'll throw at you. There are 5 geeky, nerdy questions, kind of like a yes or no sort of thing, but you can expound on those answers. It feels like I haven't done this in forever. So I have these for you, but is there anything else you want to throw out here as we sort of get into end show?
I think just come and check out Podchaser. If you can't find a beta key, just talk to us. We'll give you one. You can check out the Slack that's in our footer, or email us, or find us on Facebook or Twitter. Just search for Podchaser there. Obviously, you can use the Legends of Tabletop key, which you guys have, to get in there as well. And give us feedback. Give us feature requests. Tell us if there are any bugs. Tell us what we could be doing better. We're looking for feedback from everybody.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we'll jump into the final 5. I'll just throw them out at you with no pre-preparation.
No, I have not seen these questions. I don't know what's coming.
All right, so the first one is Star Trek or Star Wars?
Trek, definitely. I like Star Wars, the most recent Star Wars. I like where they're going with Star Wars with the more recent stuff. I don't have the full-on hate for the prequels that everyone else does, but they're definitely inferior to the original trilogy. But no, I don't know. Trek always just grabbed me a bit better with its sort of more interesting sci-fi stories, you know. Particularly, I think Next Generation is probably my favorite series there. And I'm looking forward to see what they do with this new one. Hesitantly.
Yeah. Is it more like the tech and then like the, you know, the moral dilemma, especially like with New Generation? Like it's always, you know, it's not just we're gonna shoot them up. It, you know, it's
That's
more of
there's a bit more morality there, and it is just they just pull out some interesting sci-fi stuff. You know, whether it's sort of things around time travel or what the implications of different tech, you know, transporters or holodecks or whatever. And then some of my favorite ones were just the more sort of introspective episodes that they did. You know, I think the one that is a lot of people's favorites is The Inner Light, where Picard sort of finds himself living this entire life within his head. No spoilers, sorry, but it's good for the bang bang shoot 'em up kind of actiony, you know, Wild West kind of stuff, right? And the characters and the costumes and you know, I love Star Wars, but you know, Star Trek just definitely sort of holds a more special place in my heart.
Yeah, Star Wars is very black and white, very spaghetti western. It's pretty clear cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bradley said Stargate actually.
My ex-wife was really into Stargate, so that's not on my radar anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. I never actually watched it, so take some of my nerd cred away, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Tabletop or video games?
Video games are definitely they've been my love for a long time, ever since I was a kid. I love the idea of tabletop, as we talked about, though. It's just it's a hell of a lot easier to sit down with a video game by yourself. And I mostly play single player. Like I barely ever get any time for online. Sure. I used to, obviously, as a teenager when I had a lot more time. I would play a lot more online. I miss LAN parties. I really miss LAN parties. Yeah, I'd have to say video games there. As much as I do love playing a good tabletop game, there's so much more imagination in the tabletop game, which the potential is so much greater. But video games are that quick fix.
Yeah. All right. DC or Marvel?
Marvel. I started with DC. Like Dad had a lot of Superman comics. So if it was any DC character, I'd be a Superman guy. Not really a big fan of what they did with the recent movies.
Yeah, they've been terrible.
Yeah. But I sort of
supposed to be fantastic.
I'm hoping so. I haven't seen it yet. We're going to go soon. My wife and I really want to see that. Although the new Spider-Man's meant to be really good too, so I want to see that too. These days I'm definitely more Marvel. I mean, in the movies they've definitely just done a whole lot better, but sort of, again, I came to comics kind of late in a way. Like I read a lot of them because my dad had them, but to actually sort of start buying and collecting, it wasn't until my mid-20s that I really started doing that. And I got into Spider-Man, when the Ultimate Spider-Man started up. I was collecting those and really enjoyed those, and I went back and read a bunch of the old ones, and since then I've read a bunch of Daredevil and other stuff. Again, I'm not a huge comic books guy. I like a lot of the indie stuff as well, and a lot of the non-superhero stuff. Like Fables is really good. I've got a good collection of those, and this is superhero, but Invincible. I quite like that, which is one of the Image ones. But no, Marvel. There you go.
Okay. Sci-fi or fantasy?
Definitely sci-fi. I read fantasy here and there. I prefer fantasy in book form. Then I find that TV and movies often don't do fantasy really well. Lacking. Sci-fi I mean, I prefer sci-fi in book form too, really, but I feel like it translates a bit better to movies, particularly. TV can be hit and miss, but really good TV sci-fi is really good, I find.
Right.
It's almost at either end. I feel like there's a lot of cheesy TV sci-fi out there that just kind of follows formulas and doesn't really try anything new.
It's a whole network
but when
for that.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. But yeah, when a good sci-fi movie comes out, like that's always, I don't know, that when it works well, it's really good.
All right. So. And the last one is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
The ability to freeze time, so I could actually get some shit done, or play video games, or whatever. Either that or not needing sleep. They're kind of for the same reason.
Yeah. I can second that.
Yeah, well, you've got kids too, so I think that's when that started.
Yeah.
Kids kind of take it out of you. But.
Yeah, it's, between work and the podcast and the kid and, just like regular, I'm divorced. So, regular house stuff, there's nobody to do it. So it's like,
no.
I'll lament, I wish I had 4 more hours in the day. And people are like, well, just stay up later. And I'm like, well, I sleep in about 4 hours or 5 hours now. Like, it's not really an option.
Yeah, it's not really tenable. And no, that's it. It'd be something around time. I don't know. Give me a Harry Potter time turner or something. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Just give me some more time to get stuff done.
Amen. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you. It was a pleasure to have you on. We're excited to be part of the beta for Podchaser. It seems like a wonderful program. Have a lot of options. There's a lot of cool things that are coming up, and we're excited to see you guys really succeed and for this to be like a huge thing. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it was great coming on, and I think this is the first time I've been interviewed in this way, so it was a lot of fun. And yeah, thanks for the support, and definitely keep talking about us and keep checking out the beta and yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and we've got a lot of good features coming out. So
cool, awesome. We've got links in the show notes for all your stuff, your Twitter for Podchaser and all that kind of stuff.
BitStorm, listen to BitStorm. We need more listeners.
I don't know I think I put a link for BitStorm in there too.
I think you did. I think. Yeah.
Awesome. See, I'm on top of it.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, so I'll give out all of our stuff here as well. You can find this cool content and all of our other awesome stuff at Legends of Tabletop. We're on Twitter at Legends Tabletop, we're on iTunes, Feedburner, Stitcher, Google Play. The cat's face looks huge in the friggin' screen. It's really weird. It's throwing me off. You can use, go to the Podchaser beta, put in Legends of Tabletop, all lowercase, and get in there on the beta for that. Follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook, and we appreciate all your likes and follows and comments and all those things. Thank you for checking it out, and we'll catch all you guys next time.
All right. See you later.